I want you to imagine something for a moment. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a vast, churning ocean. The waves crash against the shore, constant, powerful, relentless. Now look down at your feet. See how the water rushes in, surrounds your feet, and then retreats, taking with it small particles of sand from beneath you. Do this long enough, and even the ground you stand on will change. This is the first law of nature I learned as a child watching the waters of Hong Kong Harbor. Nothing remains fixed. Everything changes. Adapt or perish. I can still feel the sting of that lesson on my skin. I was 22, filled with pride about my fighting system, believing I had found the ultimate path. One evening, after hours of training, I faced an opponent who didn't respect my techniques, my lineage, my certainty. Within moments, he had dismantled everything I thought I knew. It wasn't my body that took the greatest blow that night. It was my ego. That defeat wrote itself into my bones, carved itself into my memory, because it taught me what I'm about to share with you today. Rigidity leads to breaking, while adaptability leads to growth. The strongest tree in the forest isn't the one with the thickest trunk. It's the one that can bend with the fiercest winds. You're here now because something inside you recognizes this truth. You sense that the world is changing faster than ever before, that the old ways of thinking, working, living, they're becoming obsolete overnight. What worked yesterday means nothing tomorrow. The paths others have walked are disappearing beneath your feet. You feel it, don't you? That urgent whisper that says adapt or be left behind. But adaptation isn't just about survival. It's about thriving. It's about becoming like water, my friend. Water doesn't struggle against the rock in its path. It flows around it. Water doesn't resist the container it's placed in. It assumes its shape. Water doesn't fight gravity. It works with it. And yet, given enough time, water carves canyons through mountains. Water shapes continents. Water is soft, yielding, but nothing on earth is more powerful. This isn't just philosophy. This is the practical truth I discovered through combat, through cinema, through constantly reinventing myself in a world that wasn't designed for someone like me. The world will tell you to stay in your lane, to accept limitations, to be realistic. But what is realistic about clinging to outdated ways when everything around you transforms? Remember the whispers when I first began teaching non-Chinese students in America. This isn't our tradition, they said. You're betraying your heritage, they warned. The martial arts community wanted me to preserve their precious systems exactly as they had been for centuries. But preservation without evolution is just slow death. Those who insisted on rigid adherence to tradition now exist only in history books, while those who adapted continue to shape the future. Think about your own life. Where are you resisting necessary change? Where have you become rigid, inflexible, trapped in patterns that no longer serve you? Your job that drains your soul but pays your bills, your relationship that offers comfort but starves your growth, your daily habits that keep you locked in the same cycle year after year, wondering why nothing changes. Change or be changed. This is not a philosophy. This is the fundamental law of existence. The dinosaurs didn't choose extinction. They simply failed to adapt when the world transformed around them. And now they exist only as bones in museums, cautionary reminders fossilized in stone. First principle: water never fights against obstacles. It flows around them. Most people waste their energy battling directly against resistance. Their boss says no, so they push harder. Their body feels pain, so they force through it. Their mind feels fear, so they try to conquer it head on. This is foolishness. This is the path to exhaustion. I remember filming Enter the Dragon, working 18-hour days in scorching heat. The other actors attacked each scene with brute force, spending every ounce of energy on the first takes, depleted by midday. But I approached each challenge differently. When fatigue became my obstacle, I didn't fight it. I adjusted my techniques to require less energy. When the heat became unbearable, I didn't resist it. I incorporated it into my movements, using the sweat, the discomfort as part of my expression. When barriers arise in your path, and they will arise daily, ask yourself, am I fighting against this obstacle, or am I finding the natural path around it? The obstacle remains unchanged by your struggle, but you become drained by the effort. Water doesn't exhaust itself by charging into the boulder. It simply discovers the path of least resistance and continues its journey. Second principle: water adapts to any container without losing its essence. Pour water into a cup, it becomes the cup. pour it into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Yet water remains water, its fundamental nature unchanged. When I first arrived in America, I faced a choice: remain rigidly Chinese and struggle, or adapt to my new environment without losing who I was. Many immigrants make the mistake of either refusing to adapt at all or abandoning their entire identity to fit in. Approaches lead to suffering. I chose a different path. I learned English perfectly, studied Western philosophy, wore American clothes, but I never forgot my roots, my perspective, the wisdom of my culture. I didn't just survive in America. I transformed American culture itself, precisely because I adapted without surrendering my essence. Look at your own life. How often do you find yourself in new situations, with new people, facing new expectations? Do you remain rigidly yourself, refusing to adjust regardless of context? Or do you become a chameleon, losing your core values with each new environment? Neither extreme serves you. The person who cannot adapt becomes irrelevant. The person who has no stable center becomes invisible. But the person who can maintain their essence while adapting their expression to any situation, that person becomes unstoppable. They can enter any room, any industry, any challenge, and not merely survive but thrive. Third principle: water doesn't try to control its destination, it surrenders to the journey while continuously moving forward. This might be the hardest principle to embrace in a world obsessed with 5-year plans and carefully mapped careers. We want guarantees. We want certainty. We want to know exactly where we're going before we take the first step. When I left Hong Kong for America, I had no guarantee of success. When I walked away from a successful TV series to pursue my vision for martial arts films, everyone thought I was destroying my career. When I created Jeet, abandoning traditional systems, the masters said I would fail. If I had demanded certainty before acting, I would have remained frozen in place, watching life pass me by. Water doesn't know if it will reach the ocean when it begins as rain falling on a mountain. It simply follows the natural path downward, adjusting course as necessary, always moving. Sometimes it gets trapped in a pool for years, sometimes it races through rapids, sometimes it plunges over cliffs, but eventually it reaches the ocean. Not through careful planning, but through natural persistence and adaptability. Your life will unfold in ways you cannot possibly predict. The career you planned may disappear overnight. The relationship you counted on may transform beyond recognition. The skills you mastered may become obsolete. Clinging to your predetermined path will only bring suffering. Instead, become like water. Have direction, but surrender to the journey. Move constantly forward, but adapt your course as the landscape changes. Trust not in your ability to control outcomes, but in your ability to respond skillfully to whatever arises. This is how water, the softest thing in nature, carves canyons through solid rock, not through force, but through persistent adaptability. These 3 principles, flowing around obstacles, adapting without losing essence, surrendering to the journey while moving forward, these are not merely philosophical ideas. They are practical tools for navigating a world in constant flux. They are the difference between those who break under pressure and those who bend, adapt, and ultimately prevail. Let me share with you 4 practices I developed to transform myself from a rigid martial artist into someone who could adapt to any situation without losing my center. These aren't theoretical exercises. These are the exact methods I used to revolutionize martial arts, break into Hollywood despite overwhelming racism, and create a legacy that continues decades after my physical form is gone. The first practice: identify and eliminate your fixed positions. Fixed positions in combat mean death. A fighter who cannot adjust their stance quickly becomes vulnerable. The same is true in life. Your fixed positions are the beliefs, habits, and identities you refuse to question or change, regardless of evidence or circumstances. Every morning for 1 week, ask yourself, what am I absolutely certain about that could actually be wrong? What do I refuse to reconsider even when reality suggests otherwise? It might be your certainty about your career path. It might be your approach to relationships. It might be beliefs about your own limitations. I remember being certain that martial arts had to be practiced in specific traditional patterns. This certainty became a prison until I forced myself to question it. The moment I opened myself to the possibility that I might be wrong, My entire art transformed. Write down 3 certainties each morning, then deliberately seek evidence that contradicts them. Don't defend against this evidence. Absorb it, consider it, let it challenge you. This isn't about abandoning your values. It's about ensuring your positions remain fluid, responsive to reality, rather than fixed in comfortable illusion. The second practice, the daily adaptation drill. Each day for 1 month, deliberately place yourself in a situation that requires adaptation. It might be taking a different route to work. It might be having a conversation with someone whose views oppose yours, not to debate them, but to genuinely understand their perspective. It might be trying a skill you believe you have no talent for. When I was developing Jeet Kune, I would deliberately train with experts from completely different fighting systems. Boxing, fencing, wrestling, not to defeat them, but to absorb what was useful from their approaches. Each encounter forced me to adapt, to question my assumptions, to evolve. The key to this practice is entering each situation not with the goal of succeeding, but with the goal of adapting. Success might happen, but it's not the point. The development of your adaptability muscle, that's the victory. Like water poured repeatedly into different containers, you learn to adjust your shape without losing yourself. The third practice, emptying your cup daily. There's a famous story about a scholar who visits a Zen master to learn from him. As they sit down for tea, the scholar begins explaining everything he already knows. The master begins pouring tea into the scholar's cup, but doesn't stop when it's full. Tea overflows everywhere. "What are you doing?" the scholar exclaims. The master replies, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and assumptions. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" Every evening before sleep, practice emptying your cup. Sit quietly for 10 minutes and systematically release everything you think you know. Your professional expertise, let it go. Your identity as smart, strong, capable, release it. Your assumptions about tomorrow, dissolve them. This isn't about devaluing your knowledge. It's about creating space for new possibilities. A cup that remains perpetually full cannot receive anything fresh. A mind convinced of its own completeness cannot evolve. I practiced this nightly, especially after achieving success. The more people called me a master, the more deliberately I returned to the mindset of a student. The more formulas I discovered that worked, the more willingly I abandoned them to discover something better. Empty your cup not once, but daily. The fourth practice, water meditation. This is the practice that transformed my understanding of adaptability from intellectual concept to embodied reality. Find a quiet place where you won't be disturbed. Close your eyes and imagine yourself as water, not metaphorically, literally. Feel your solid boundaries dissolving. Feel yourself becoming fluid, adaptive, responsive. Now imagine various scenarios you're currently facing. A difficult conversation with your partner, a challenge at work, a personal limitation you're trying to overcome. Don't visualize yourself as a human facing these challenges. Experience yourself as water encountering these situations. How would water move around this obstacle? How would water fill this space? How would water find the path forward? Practice this for just 5 minutes daily, and you'll begin to notice yourself responding differently to life's challenges. The rigid reactions that once seemed automatic will begin to dissolve. The creative adaptations that once required effort will begin to flow naturally. These 4 practices, identifying fixed positions, the daily adaptation drill, emptying your cup, and water meditation, these aren't philosophical concepts to think about. They are practical tools to be used daily. They are the difference between intellectual understanding and embodied wisdom. I developed these practices through years of experimentation, failure, and refinement. They transformed me from a talented but limited fighter into someone whose influence transcended not just fighting styles, but cultural boundaries. They can transform you too, not into a copy of me, but into the most adaptable, responsive version of yourself. But here's what you must understand. Adaptation isn't about weakness. It isn't about surrendering your power or compromising your values. The most dangerous misinterpretation of "be like water" is believing it means being passive, formless, without direction or force. Water adapts to its environment, yes, but water also shapes its environment. Water flows around obstacles, but given enough time, water carves through mountains. Water takes the shape of its container, but water also erodes, dissolves, and transforms whatever contains it. True adaptability isn't about constantly reacting to external forces. It's about maintaining such profound internal flexibility that you can respond appropriately to any situation. Sometimes with gentle yielding, sometimes with unstoppable force, sometimes by completely transforming the dynamic itself. I demonstrated this during a controversial demonstration in Long Beach. A challenger insisted I couldn't possibly move him if he tensed all his muscles and stood firm. Rather than meeting force with force, I asked him a question that made him think, instantly changing his internal state and making him movable. I adapted not by becoming weaker, but by recognizing a different kind of strength. The power of psychological shifting, rather than physical pushing. This is crucial to understand. Adaptation requires strength. It demands courage. The weak cannot adapt. They can only break or hide. It takes tremendous inner power to remain flexible in a world that rewards rigid certainty. It takes remarkable self-awareness to recognize when your approaches aren't working and need to change. It takes genuine confidence to release strategies that succeeded yesterday, but limit you today. Look at any industry being disrupted right now. The leaders who fail aren't those lacking intelligence or resources. They're those lacking adaptability. Look at any relationship struggling to survive. The breakdown rarely comes from insufficient love. It comes from inflexible expectations, rigid roles, inability to evolve together. I faced this test repeatedly throughout my career. When Hollywood offered me stereotypical roles that would have guaranteed steady work but compromised my dignity, I adapted not by accepting limitations, but by creating an entirely new path. When traditional martial arts proved too restrictive, I didn't abandon discipline. I channeled it into creating something revolutionary. When my body reached certain limits, I didn't deny them. I worked around them, developing new techniques that maximized my unique attributes. Now I ask you, where in your life have you been responding with rigidity when adaptability would serve you better? Where have you been clinging to methods, mindsets, or identities that may have worked once but now hold you back? Adaptation isn't about surrendering your goals. It's about being flexible about the path to reach them. Adaptation isn't about abandoning your values. It's about finding new expressions for them as circumstances change. Adaptation isn't about erasing your identity. It's about allowing that identity to evolve rather than calcify. Remember, adapt or perish isn't just dramatic language. It's the fundamental law of nature that no philosophy, no technology, no amount of human will can override. Every species that has disappeared from Earth, every civilization that exists only in ruins, every company that once dominated but now is forgotten, they all share the same epitaph: they failed to adapt. But you are different. You are here now, receiving these words because something in you recognizes this truth. Something in you knows that the path forward isn't about becoming harder, more certain, more fixed in your ways. Something in you understands that true power lies in responsive strength, not rigid force. I discovered this truth through combat, through art, through the struggle to express myself authentically, in a world that continuously placed barriers in my path. You will discover it through your own challenges, your own art, your own path. The specifics differ, but the principle remains. Water adapts and overcomes. Water yields and conquers. So I challenge you now, for the next 30 days, become a student of adaptability. Notice where you resist change that's already happening. Observe where you become rigid when flexibility would serve better. Pay attention to where you're fighting against reality instead of flowing with it. Start with small adaptations. Take a different route home. Change a habitual reaction. Question one certainty daily, then gradually increase the challenge. Have the conversation you've been avoiding. Consider the career change that both attracts and terrifies you. Release the identity that once protected you, but now constrains you. As you practice, remember this isn't about erratic change for its own sake. Water doesn't change direction randomly. It responds to the terrain while continuously moving toward its destination. Maintain your core direction, your values, your purpose, your essence, while allowing your expression to adapt to changing landscapes. I promised you something powerful at the beginning of our time together. I promised to share the secret that transformed me from just another martial artist into something history remembers. That secret isn't a technique or a philosophy or a mindset, though it encompasses all these things. The secret is simple but demanding. Train yourself to welcome change rather than resist it. Develop the habit of asking not how can I maintain what I know, but how can I adapt to what's emerging. The martial artist who masters 1,000 fixed techniques will always be defeated by changing circumstances, but the martial artist who masters adaptability can respond effectively to any attack, even one they've never seen before. Same applies to every arena of life. Business leaders who master adaptability thrive through market shifts that destroy their rigid competitors. Artists who master adaptability continue creating meaningful work as tastes and technologies transform. Relationships that master adaptability deepen through life changes that fracture inflexible connections. When I faced racism in Hollywood, I could have become bitter and rigid, fighting directly against an immovable system. Instead, I adapted, not by accepting limitations, but by creating new paths where none existed before. When I reached physical limitations, I didn't deny them or break myself trying to overcome them directly. I adapted my entire approach to maximize different attributes. This is your moment to choose. Will you be the rock or the water? The rock appears strong, unchanging, impressive in its solidity. But given enough time, the water always wins. The rock can only remain as it is or break. The water flows, adapts, and ultimately reshapes the world around it. The world you're navigating today is changing faster than at any point in human history. Technologies transform overnight, industries disappear in months, skills become obsolete in years. Social structures shift beneath our feet. Those clinging to rigid certainty aren't displaying strength, they're revealing fear. True strength in this world doesn't come from fixed positions or unchanging beliefs. It comes from developing such profound inner stability that you can remain centered while continuously adapting your outer expression. It comes from being like water, maintaining your essence while changing your form to match any container life places you in. This is what I discovered through years of martial arts, through breaking from tradition, through constantly reinventing myself in a world that tried to define me by its limitations rather than my possibilities. This is what led me to create Jeet Kune, not as another fixed style, but as an expression of adaptability itself. A martial art based not on rigid forms, but on responsive flow. And this is what I offer you now, not a system to follow, but an invitation to develop your own expression of adaptability. Not techniques to memorize, but principles to embody, not answers to cling to, but questions that will continue to unfold throughout your lifetime. The rigid tree that refuses to bend eventually breaks in the storm, but the bamboo that yields without surrendering its root, that continues to stand when the winds pass. The question isn't whether storms will come. The question is what you will become in response.